We all deal with death at some point, and Americans go to funeral homes to help them grieve for a loved one. We are in a state of vulnerability, and that's why it's so tragic that the American funeral industry needlessly exploits that grief and vulnerability for profit. From embalming, caskets, graves, and more, funeral homes will often pressure people with predatory sales tactics to get them to buy more than they need. But wait, how did we get to this point? Funeral home pressuring isn't new. It's been happening for over 50 years, but only recently has it gotten much worse, mostly due to what journalist Mark Harris calls the modern burial practice.
And that is the chemical embalming of the remains, the burial of the body or the placement of the body into a metal casket, and then the placing of that casketed, embalmed body at the bottom of the grave that we call the burial vault. So that's pretty much the American way of death.
Despite sounding great at first, modern burials are actually pretty awful.
The average cost of modern burial runs on average from $10,000 to $12,000. Although you can talk to families who'll tell you they paid a lot more than that.
In fact, quite a lot more. The average price of a funeral is $10,000, but can exceed $30,000. And the average price difference between funeral homes within 5 miles of each other is around 165% in urban areas. The funeral industry has been known to engage in predatory business practices, like selling vulnerable families add-ons and services that they don't need, like misleading prices, prepayments, charges for viewing, and more. This has led a bunch of class action lawsuits, which forced the FCC to create the funeral rule, a rule which makes sure that funeral homes let you choose only the services that you specifically want without forcing you to buy the extra stuff. However, 27% of funeral homes in America don't follow these rules regularly. Okay, so modern funeral homes suck, but what are the other options? Well, cremation for a start. 2 years ago, for the first time in this country's history, more Americans were cremated than buried, and soon we're going to hit 50% of Americans being cremated. The reason why cremation is so popular is because it's a lot cheaper. A typical cremation costs around $1,400, compared to the $10,000 to $12,000 price tag we mentioned earlier. Another option would be to just shop around. If you want to have a funeral, look outside the funeral home. There are plenty of funeral homes, and Americans generally don't shop around. Another option is to have a natural burial. A number of natural cemeteries have sprung up across the country where unembalmed bodies are buried in biodegradable containers and allowed to decompose naturally. It's inexpensive and can actually help preserve and restore land and wildlife. No matter what the method though, it's clear that we have to reform the way funeral homes work. We're all going to die at one point. The question is, what are we going to pay for it?